粵語郭文貴49，今日係2月24號。呢一輯係2日前郭文貴同班農等等朋友向美國人民嘅廣播嚟嘅。佢哋會談論到研發生物武器係咪就係瘟疫嘅來源呢？雖然唔少資料你可能已經知道噶啦，但係論證咁嚴謹同埋咁全面呢就唔多嘅。特別適合蒙查查嘅多數美國人啦，因此又適合冇乜聽到真相嘅淺藍朋友嘅，所以聽完之後呢，值得考慮下好唔好向佢哋介紹嘅。佢哋呢個節目呢，其實冇結論嘅，不過就有質疑。不過咁就夠死啦！你質疑我哋永遠正確嘅黨國機器啊，咁就係陰謀咯。最後會講到中共要維護美國嘅新聞自由。仲有冇呢支歌仔唱呢？仲有一點要留意嘅就係呢個節目播出嘅時候啊，共產黨喺武漢嘅手腳仲未做得齊，所以當時仲係拒絕緊外國嘅病毒專家落去湖北同埋武漢嘅，所以其中一個論點所依據嘅事實可以話有少少過咗時嘅。不過總體論述都仲係嚴謹嘅。仲有，假如你接受咗我前幾輯嘅推薦，今朝有去郭文貴個頻道或者戰友之家嘅頻道抄過嘢聽嘅話，咁你已經聽過噶啦。我嘅加工只係改善咗其中1/10嘅字幕嘅啫。好咯，去片。
Has contracted the virus.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
Japan, where a bus driver contracted the virus.
Coronavirus has killed more than 100 people there and infected more than 4,500.
We have to prepare for the worst, always, because if you don't, and the worst happens.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome to War Room Pandemic. Stephen K. Bannon live from Capitol Hill. It's Friday, the 21st of February, the year of our Lord 2020. We have, by the way, Bill Gertz is our guest from the Washington Times, is in the War Room today. Jack Maxey is in the War Room here, who runs the War Room every day, the analytical part of the War Room, and we're honored to be joined by Miles Guo from the Himalayan Embassy in New York City, which is the broadcast center of G News. Miles Guo joins us. We're live on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Salem Broadcast Radio throughout the country, on America's Voice.News, the platform for the Trump movement in the United States and the world, and on FM 99.1 and 103.9 in Chicago. And very honored to be part of the Windy City and the city of broad shoulders out there in Chicago. The virus is a demon, and the demon cannot be allowed to hide. Why do we do War Room Pandemic? And this is episode 22. Episode 22 of War Room Pandemic. Why do we do this? We've been doing this for about a month because this is the single most important story in the world. There's something happening in China that is unique in human history. And what is that? As we sit here today and you listen to this show, you listen to the 1 hour where we condense all this information about the pandemic, 1/10 of mankind's humanity, 1/10 of humanity. We have basically 7.5 to 7.6 billion people in the world. 1/10 of humanity is under some form of quarantine in China. 100 million people are in a kind of a hard quarantine. Another 400 or 500 million is some sort of lockdown. The factories are not open. It's going to start to have a major impact on the world's economy. More importantly than even the world's economy, this contagion is now spreading. It is in 31 nations throughout the world. When we started this show a month ago, I think it was in 3 or 4. In fact, that lead-in, that magnificent lead-in that Raheem Gassam and the rest of the War Room team made was made about BBC and other from that day. And you can see how dated it was. 15 people, I think 15 people had died. There were a couple of hundred sick, or at least as reported. And now it's expanding. In the news overnight, there's a situation in Iran we're just trying to get our hands around. It looks like in Iran this thing's starting to explode. And so, and this is where they're saying, hey, these people did not travel to China. Now, the people come to Iran to these sites that are quite holy in the Islamic faith, in the Shiite version of the Shiite segment of that one of the great religions in the world. We're going to get into all that. One of the things we wanted to do today, because I think this gets to be one of the most controversial parts of it, and we'll have Dr. Stephen Hatfield, who is our advisor on this. Dr. Hatfield from the Army's Medical Research Institute, which is kind of the pros from Dover when you talk about bioweapons, is out actually in working groups all over the city as many people are starting to pull this stuff together. Is one of the reasons we have Bill Gertz here. Bill Gertz is one of the most sophisticated reporters, analysts on the situation in China. He's been covering China for 30 years plus. He's done brilliant work 25 years ago during the Clinton administration, before the WTO. Bill Gertz was on this story. Bill Gertz is a renowned for the China hands in this town. Bill Gertz is a guy who's known, has broken hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories. He has a book, which is along with General Spaulding's new book, Stealth War. This is the other one that's a must-read right now, Deceiving the Sky, Inside Communist China's Drive for Global Supremacy. And this is, if you read Dr. Pillsbury's book, The 100-Year Marathon, that is written a couple of years ago. It's a response to the 100-Year Marathon is a response to my favorite book, Unrestricted Warfare, which shows you the PLA's information war, economic war, and potential kinetic war against the West. Dr. Pillsbury's book is written in response to that. That's the one the president reads. Pillsbury's on Lou Dobbs all the time. But this is an updated version, a more specific version, Deceiving the Sky. It's quite brilliant, and it's written by a guy that's renowned among the hardcore China hands as being on top of things. And so the last couple of days, we've done this show actually from New York, from the Himalayan Embassy, this is the Breitbart Embassy, that's the Himalayan Embassy. Miles Guo has this broadcast center, and people should know about Miles. Miles is, quite controversial, right? He's one of the most controversial guys in the world. Miles is known as the most senior whistleblower ever to come out of China. And I just tell people, hey, I'm a facts guy. I just look at results. Miles Guo brought up H&A, right? That H&A, the largest, and by the way, most people in the United States don't know this, but at one time the largest financial corporation in the world, right? Owned stuff all over the place, owned, parts of Deutsche Bank, parts of all these Swiss banks, owned all kind of operating companies, had grown up from a small airline in one of the provinces of China. And Miles Guo said, hey, this thing is totally owned by the CCP. It's actually owned through two trusts that happen to be in the United States of America. He was vilified. He was sued. Everybody went off. Turns out he's absolutely correct. When you look at it, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, they all backed off. They all said eventually, oh, yeah, he's right. H&A, and Miles Guo's been saying this now for a year, H&A is going to collapse. It's a total Ponzi scheme. Yesterday, H&A starts to go into receivership in China, and they're blaming part of it on the virus. This is another large thing. He called the Hong Kong thing. When I was sitting there, he said, this Hong Kong thing's going to be huge. It's going to start. Everybody mocked and ridiculed him. Okay. So Bill Gertz and Miles Guo. Two guys who have, Bill Gertz as a foreign devil, right, as an American, has reported on this for, 25 or 30 years, right?
Yes.
Miles Guo, a huge whistleblower, and a guy that's been right. Every time he calls something out, it always ends up being right. May take a while to get there, right, but it's always right. So in this whole situation now about the virus, and it's President Xi that says the virus is a demon, and the demon cannot be allowed to hide. It's why we have it in the opening cut. It's why I repeat it every show, right? There's something up here. There's something happening in China that is unlike anything that's happened in human history. You have a advanced economy that is now central to the world's manufacturing and logistics chains, and we have two economies, the United States and China, that are absolutely inextricably linked. Right? You have this economy that is absolutely in a free fall. They have shut down a nation of 1.4 billion people, and it is literally in lockdown. At least 50% to 60% are actually in a lockdown that is either hard quarantine or some sort of lockdown. And we say quarantine, let's go back to Wuhan. And for our audience out there, and particularly people in Chicago and the United States of America, Wuhan, I realize the city just started to hear about the last couple of weeks, it is larger than New York City. The population is 11 to 14 million people. 5 million people left for the holidays, okay, which is, I think, 2x what Chicago is, or about the size of Chicago. This is a massive city. It's the Pittsburgh of China. It's on the Yangtze River in the very heart of China. Hubei province is the very center. It's the size of France, and it is now under quarantine, and they sent a vice premier down there, Vice Premier Sun, one of the senior women in the Chinese Communist Party, and she went down and said, "Hey, here's my version of quarantine. We're going to come to your door." And by the way, they're going door to door in Wuhan. This will be going door to door in New York City. We're going to knock on the door and we're going to take your temperature. And if we deem that you have the virus, if we deem right there, you're coming to quarantine, not to a hospital, you're going to quarantine. In quarantine, there's one way out of quarantine. That's through the back, through an ambulance to take your body to be cremated. So it's essentially a death sentence. If we deem that you don't come along with us, we're basically going to nail the door shut. Okay? So I hope you like living on water, because tap water is what you're going to get after your food runs out. My point is, this is like Khrushchev going to Stalingrad in World War II. This is the hammer from the central office that gets sent to say, hey, guys, there's a new sheriff in town. This is the way we're doing it, okay? But you do notice, as Miles Guo has said consistently, you don't see anybody from the Central Committee, which are the 12 guys around it. You don't see Xi, you don't see Wang Xishan. You don't see them in Wuhan. And I asked Miles, why are Central Committee? He says, number one, they don't want to be tied to a failing effort because it's not going to get better. And number two, they don't want to die. Right, the head of the Wuhan, and I want to put this thing up, Jack, on the thing. Wuhan, the head medical guy, the senior medical officer for Wuchan Hospital in Wuhan, died of the virus. Another hero. These Chinese doctors, these Chinese heroes are unbelievable. Like Dr. Li, they go in these unders. He's the head guy. You think he would have the best hazmat suit. He dies, but what's most heart-rendering is the video that's up there of his wife chasing the ambulance. So I want to go into this for a second before we bring Miles on. You wrote a couple of articles. You've been now the centerpiece of a firestorm, Bill Gertz, because you started. Tom Cotton's involved, Miles Guo. They're even throwing me in there. Hey, I'll take it. But it is in the Chinese Communist Party, the People's Daily, right, picked up on what Lancet magazine said when they had these guys throughout the world saying, hey, this is getting us off because it's most probable that it came as a natural mutation. This is about the question. Is this a natural mutation that came from a wet market of a bat to a human and then a human to a human in some sort of metastasized way, or is this somehow related to the P4, the level 4 lab they happen to have by coincidences, and there are no coincidences, happens to be in Wuhan, 4 miles from the market itself. You wrote the first 2 articles. Cotton's on this, and now it's big enough that the Lancet magazine guys are now saying it didn't happen, and the Chinese People's Daily are saying, this is Bill Gertz, foreign devil, trying to stir up problems.
Well, first off, I like to say that no one knows the origin of this virus. The White House last week, Office of Science and Technology Policy, ordered the National Academy of Sciences to conduct an investigation to try and find out what the origin is. That said, we do know a number of facts. And on January 27th, I wrote an article that said this virus may have come as part of a bioweapons program. And I quoted a former Israeli military intelligence specialist, Danny Shahom, who basically has studied the Chinese Biological Warfare Center program, and he identified this Wuhan Institute of Virology as conducting research. In China, it's not
conducting research to find vaccines, conducting research on... Look, the P4 labs are supposed to conduct research. That's what they're supposed to do. Yeah. What type of research are they doing? Are they doing this?
We don't know. We don't know because utmost secrecy.
P4 labs are supposed to conduct what type of research?
Well, on coronaviruses, as in the case that they're doing, it's even been said that this lab in Wuhan was conducting anthrax, which is not a virus. This is a biological weapon. We know from the Soviet days they had the anthrax release. So basically, we need to get inside that lab. The Chinese have been totally secret about it. They have not. I think the U.S. should invoke the Biological Warfare Convention, which China signed, and use that as the means to get inspections and get information from this lab. That's the only way we're going to find out about the origin. So,
okay, hang on a second. You're way ahead of the wagon train here. I want to go back because this is important. Now you got Lancet magazine, this top peer-reviewed journal magazine that's got getting thousands of signatures of the top virus guys in the world saying essentially Bill Gertz is taking us to a place that we don't want to go. And your counter is...
My counter is that anyone that says they know the origin of this virus or they know that the origin is not from something is either dishonest or ill-informed or both.
But aren't they saying, and I think Dr. Halford's saying, and remember we had the Indian Institute of Technology, we've had IIT, we've had other people throughout the world have come out and said, hey, you can see by the way the genome sequence here that this thing has been tweaked. But then you have Dr. Hatfield and others are saying, hey, they've seen at least as much of the genome sequence as they've seen. It looks like, and even they put in there highly, I think Lancet magazine, highly probable that it's not a weapon. Not 100%, but highly probable it's not a weapon. What do you say just to the basic science? Okay. I understand you're not a virus, but what do you say to the basic science?
I talked to a former military officer, doctor, who worked at Fort Detrick. U.S. biological weapons research was done.
Fort Detrick, you should know, is the place where that's where the pros from Dover.
That's right.
That's not CDC. These are serious. Yeah. This is the pros from Dover.
He told me that coronaviruses are not a good biological weapon. That said,
why is that?
Because they're hard to control. That said, why? Let's look at one theory. Let's say that the Chinese Biological Weapons Lab, which is again secret, this is a covert, undeclared program. It's linked to the Wuhan Institute of Virology as well as another institute in Wuhan. And by the way, Wuhan is the PLA's big medical center. It's like San Antonio for the U.S. Army. And so this is the place where the PLA operates. And again, in China, the military and civilian are totally intertwined. In fact, Xi Jinping has pushed military-civilian fusion. So this idea that this is simply a civilian research lab is totally wrong.
Is dangerously naive.
Exactly. So let's say if you wanted to develop a coronavirus as a weapon, say if you wanted to pacify a protesting area like Hong Kong, you would first need to develop a vaccine or an antidote to that. So let's just say they were studying this coronavirus, looking for a vaccine, and it escaped, either through an infected
employee.
But
that's speculation upon speculation upon speculation. Let me go back. You just mentioned a secret program they have. The purpose of this level 4 lab, remember, this came up, and this for the audience, this lab was built after SARS. It was built by the French under supervision. There's only 10 or 12 of these labs in the world. We have a couple here in the United States, a couple in Europe. There's only a few in the world. China was deemed to rate one, given China's growth in entering the developing nations and the fact of SARS, they need to do real research on a real-time basis. Is that not the fact of how they got to level 4, correct?
Yes. And by the way, during this whole crisis, we have heard almost nothing from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. I mean, just think about that. That would be like the CDC, like the U.S. having its own epidemic and the CDC being silent. Yes, we haven't heard anything from the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Okay, I'm going to come back and drill down on all this in 1 second. We'll now turn to Miles Guo. Miles, you've been as a top whistleblower. And we saw what happened to the whistleblower, Dr. Lee. Dr. Lee, this brave doctor with a group of doctors. In December, Dr. Lee started to take on the role of a whistleblower to try to say, hey, we have a major SARS problem here in Wuhan. The authorities basically brought him before a magistrate. He was dressed down. He said, this is wrong. You have to sign these documents that you're a rumor monger and you're going to go to prison. Later on, it was deemed that he was actually a whistleblower trying to alert the authorities that there was a massive problem in Wuhan. It looks like that time the things were not done is the reason that this pandemic has gotten out of control. Dr. Lee then heroically volunteered, after he was let go by the authorities, volunteered to go back in and start serving his patients in Wuhan, understanding that that was a death sentence. And Dr. Lee died, I think, 2 weeks after returning to service. He's one of the great heroes out there, these medical doctors. But Miles, what is your point? Your point about what's happened in Wuhan, about is this a natural virus that came out of the wet market, or do you believe, and can you back it up, that this actually came out of the biological weapons program?
Thank you, sir. I believe there's no doubt this is man-made, not from, this is the seafood marking, animal marking. This is too ridiculous. This is no reason. Same the American hamburger is from the trees. The trees never can give you a hamburger. The trees. The hamburger is handmade, made in the kitchen. So now I think we need to focus. That's very important. It's the last 15 hours in the China, in the Wuhan, what has happened. Now, I think in the Wuhan, it's a spread epidemic is even worse. I think it is the fundamental, the reason, and day one is they want to create this the coronavirus is intentional partial to Hong Kong kill people. Now it's the real picture intentional partial abandonment. So CCP it close all the Hubei, Wuhan. All the people just can come in, cannot come out. Then all the China people, you need to go back factory to work. But Wuhan also last the 8 hours. The government see all the Hubei people, you can leave your home, no quarantine, you can go to outside to work. They release the people, but you cannot leave the Hubei Paris, Wuhan city, you cannot out to the city. So now, I really believe intentional partial abandonment is the CCP strategy. This is very dangerous. This is second, disaster again, sir.
Okay, Miles, hang on for 1 second. I want to just make sure people understand that. You're saying, and by the way, Miles, we're going to go to a break, and you and Bill, we've asked you to stay over to drill down on more of this. You're saying in the last 17 to 24 hours has been a significant change in Hubei, in Wuhan, and that is where they're letting people out of this strict quarantine, maybe in Hubei province, wanting them to go back to work, to the factories, to where the economy be picked up. But you cannot leave Hubei province. You're essentially quarantined in the entire province. They don't want people from Hubei going back to or going down to Shenzhen or any of the massive factory areas in the south. But once again, I think what people are asking, and we've got a minute, I want you to think about this over break, we'll come back to you and Bill, is what proof do you guys have right now that this is a weapon? Understanding hamburger does not grow from trees, it's cooked in the kitchen. How do you and Bill back this up? Because now this is getting to be a major international incident because of the fact that Lancet and top virus hunters around the world are saying, hey, it looks like it's natural, and you've got the People's Daily immediately pick up that article, and they essentially attacking Bill Gertz, Senator Cotton, et cetera. Okay, we're going to take a commercial break here to sell some advertisers to make sure we can pay for this. It's War Room Pandemic. It's episode 22. We've got Bill Gertz from the Washington Times. We've got Jack Maxey from the War Room himself, and we're honored to be joined today by Miles Guo from New York from the Broadcast Center of G News, which is the whistleblowers network up there that goes into China every day to give the Chinese people some enlightenment. We'll return with War Room in just a minute. And also Miles Guo up from the Himalayan Embassy Broadcast Center in New York City in the middle of Midtown Manhattan, where he broadcasts every day of the week into communist China to the Chinese people about their freedom and about how they're being suppressed. He goes through the VPN, and it's a show that literally hundreds of millions of people watch Miles Guo every day. Jack Maxey from the War Room is here. One of the things that's most stunning about this entire situation is any time that anybody tries to drill down on just the very basic information, and why is this important? For people out in Chicago, 99.1 FM and 103.9 FM. On also the John Fredericks Radio Network, the Salem Broadcast Radio Network, America's Voice, because there is a global pandemic right now. There's a global pandemic of a deadly, serious virus. The question is, how did this get started? What is it? How did it happen? How did it get throughout the world? Why are there 100 million people under quarantine in Hubei province and in Wuhan? Why are there hundreds of millions in lockdown? Why is the world economy starting to come to a standstill as this is all happening? The questions have to be asked. And what is most stunning in America, even if you set aside the hatred of President Donald Trump by the media and that they must tear down all things Trump, in this situation, what's most stunning to me were people like Senator Tom Cotton, regarded as one of the most serious men or women on Capitol Hill about national security. People like Bill Gertz that have a 25 or 30-year history of breaking significant stories coming out of China. When these type of people, leave Miles Guo and Steve Bannon and the fire breathers aside, when you take these professionals day in and day out and they are attacked by the mainstream media, and specifically the New York Times, the Washington Post, the cable news operations, they take the side of the CCP. They take what the CCP says as absolute truth. Every day, all we hear all day long, Jack, is, there's 75,000 dead, there's 76,000 people infected, there's 2,100 dead. Everybody knows that these numbers are orders of magnitude bigger than that. Dr. Gabriel Leung in Hong Kong, others understand these are total lies being put out, but every day it's repeated and repeated and repeated. And when people talk about this laboratory in Wuhan, remember, I am renowned as not a conspiracy theory guy. I don't believe in the deep state because I say it's in your face. I don't believe in conspiracies at all. But I also don't believe in coincidences. Okay? I don't believe in coincidences. Okay? This laboratory happens to be in Wuhan. The center of the PLA medical research happens to be in Wuhan. How did this come out of Wuhan? That stuff that came out of the market, we now know from the World Health Organization, from CDC, all of that everything that was said about the wet market is a lie. All those videos, and it was Miles Grove that told me the very first day the video came out with the girl eating the bat head, the live bat, he said, that is the CCP, that's how they put propaganda out. They're trying to show the Chinese people are too uncivilized, right? And that's going to be their thing, that's these wet markets. It didn't happen in the wet market. Now we know patient zero had nothing to do with the wet market. That was on December 1st. Now we think it actually happened beforehand. The CDC has not been allowed, President Trump has offered now, I think, 5 times for the CDC, the top people in the world, to go over there. Have been totally rejected by the CCP. President Xi has allowed the World Health Organization, who the top management looked to be a total disaster. And we had David Ramaswamy, a Hindu American, on here who had worked in Somalia and said that the guy, the head of the World Health Organization, was a disaster. They're now in hotel rooms, in 5-star premier hotel rooms in Beijing, reading data given to them by the CCP. They're not down in Wuhan. So, Bill, I want to go back to this thing. You made an assertion, and Miles, I'll come back to you in a second, but you made an assertion that there is a secret weapons program that's gone down there, and that has actually been documented by U.S. documents, by government documents, that it's a known fact that this was going on at that level 4, or around that level 4 lab. How do you back that up?
Well, in last summer, the State Department published its annual Arms Control Compliance Report. And in a section on China and its compliance with the Biological Weapons Convention, the report, in the unclassified version, stated pretty categorically that the U.S. believes that China is engaged in offensive biological weapons research. They have listed some of the activities. Again, it's an unclassified form. This is going on. And the fact that China has not disclosed this and has not discussed it. And the report says that the U.S. approached the Chinese, asked them about it, and were basically blown off. So again...
but hang on one second. You've also told me, and I want to make sure you back this up, you've also said that when it was agreed that they would get a level 4 lab, and the reason these level 4 labs, ladies and gentlemen, are so controversial is that you could have the ability to actually start a weapons program. You're not supposed to, but the ability is there if you had the right people. And by the way, you should understand, they sent the Major General, the Wen Chen, I think it is, Wen Chen, Miles, has been sent. She's a Major General. She studied here in the United States. She's renowned. She's renowned in the weapons program. She's now down in charge of this. But go back to this thing you talked about, that they admitted they actually had a program down there to qualify for the level 4 and kind of promise it wouldn't happen again, right?
Well, again, people mirror image with the United States, and we think that there are civilian and military facilities. In China, the military and civilian facilities are integrated totally. And so the Chinese basically are using their civilian, and this report suggests it, they call it dual-use research. In other words, military-civilian research. So you can assume that if they declared only one single P4 lab, pathogen 4 lab, that this is where they're going to be doing research on biological weapons.
The reason this is so important, as Dr. Hatfield said, right now there's only 2 ways that this gets solved. A vaccine is developed, and the vaccine is anywhere from, the experts have said, a year to a year and a half or longer away, or social separation, and that's a fancy term for quarantine, that you basically have to separate people. Dr. Hatfield says, at least as far as he sees, that the quarantine is actually not working, because this continues to grow into China. The reason it's so important, of whether it was a natural mutation from animals to humans and then human-to-human transmission versus a weapon, that the solution for this, if it's a weapon, the vaccine for this, if it's a weapon, it's how deadly it is much higher if it was some sort of a weapon or an experiment gone wrong or a vaccine gone wrong.
And Steve, let me make one point. The thing you need to understand about the Chinese Communist Party and government is that they are steeped in deception. So they were the ones that first published the genome for this virus. You have to take everything they give with great skepticism because they use deception strategically. We're now in a war of narratives. Their narrative is that any suggestion that it's man-made is a conspiracy theory. We're seeing that reflected in the New York Times and the Washington Post. And my firm belief is anyone who says they know or don't know what the cause of this is, again, is ill-informed or dishonest.
On Laura Ingraham the other night on Fox, and Laura Ingraham is one of the best interviewers, she had Dr. Fauci on. And I'll be brutally frank. I think Dr. Fauci is a disaster when he comes on media. He says one thing one day, another thing the next day. He went on John Katzmatidis' show 4 weeks or 3 weeks ago, right when we were starting this, and said, oh, this is nothing to worry about. It's nothing. Now it's a global pandemic. He was on Laura Ingraham, and she asked him, drilled him on exactly what you said. He says, oh, no, I talk to the Chinese doctors all the time, and they tell me. It's so naive. So naive and such a critical thing. I think that they've got to get control of the narrative coming out of our working group over there, and people shouldn't be allowed to go on TV and just spout stuff that's not thought through. Miles, I want to pivot back to you. You've got now on the G News site, and G News is the site that's kind of the whistleblower site for China. It's, if you look at it, it's got hundreds of millions of page views from all the Chinese people that go through the VPN, this firewall to see it. But you actually have posted today, correct me if I'm wrong, a document that your team has pulled from a government website in Russia, right? And it's in the Russian language. I understand your team is translating it, but can you tell us what that means, what this document says about the Wuhan facility and about what happened in Wuhan?
Yes, sir. Yes, today in the G News, our team is put on the G News on the line. It's from the Russia government. It's the iceberg. It gave the government the report. This is officially, it's the letter. This is from China, the coronavirus. It's the 100%. It's the man-made. It's not from natural. Okay. So on the other hand, I want to say, you need to know it's the last 2 years, 2018, 2019 since CCP in the China CCTV and the Army channel, they always talk. It's the CCP have the ability can make the coronavirus, same name, coronavirus. They say we can full control. We are about the biology weapon and the coronavirus with number one in the world, number one capability. Then it's the, since 2019, as December, is Dr. Lee, the heroes, is the with blue. And another 7 doctor is say the truth. Then CCP arrest them. Then some people die. Another 6 people, and all the family also now, until now, is get arrested. So also, it's the Wuhan, some leaders say, we are just from the animal, from the seafood market, we full control, no person to person. It's only animal to animal. We full control. After 2 weeks, it's Wuhan. It's get quarantine. It's lose control. Now it's personal to personal. So it's from the animal. It's animal. It make the fake video. The fake video from CCTV. It's the hoster make in the Hello, another country. This is why, sir, you need to ask this. Even it's from the similar seafood market and from the animal, why you want to cover the truth? Why 2 years ago, all the CCP army is in the CCTV talks, we have full capability, we have the full capability can kill America. This is officially talk, not my talk. You can go to G News, see everything in there. G News, not opinion, it's the G News. It's from the truth, in fact, evidence there. Thank you, sir.
No, but hang on. As evidence of Miles Guo, and look, a bunch of guys in mainstream media, you're going to say Miles Guo is a crazy man, and I say, hey, just look at H&A.
I'm not a crazy man. You not. Don't say me, sir. I don't like this one. I'm the creator $0 to $50 billion as legally only one Chinese. I'm not a crazy man. Don't talk.
No, I'm saying what they're saying about you, the guys, the bad guys. No, but or the guys against you.
Only CCP. Not the other side. Only CCP. It's the enemy, and all the talk liar guy talking me this is the result. This lie. I'm a good guy.
By the way, you should see in the background right there is the hotel complex that Miles Guo actually built in Beijing. But Miles, I want to go back to one thing about being right. You have said from day one, and Gertz said the same thing, that People's Daily, that CCTV, that Global TV, the new operation, that the Xinjiang AP news service they have there, their press service, Global Times, that these are all mouthpieces of the government and official state media. The State Department, Mike Pompeo, not Steve Bannon, not Bill Gertz, not Miles Guo, they officially designated the other day that these are state-owned enterprises and put out state-controlled media that's essentially propaganda and will be restricted. Now we'll have some restrictions in the United States, correct? So that's everything that Miles, you have said this now for years, and the State Department's finally acted upon it. So that's another evidence of something that Miles has brought up and said, hey, you guys take this, and particularly the mainstream media takes this when they attack like Miles Guo, or they attack you, or they attack me in the Global Times. They take it as it's a real news service, and the mainstream media just then reports this.
Yes, this is a really important step of reciprocity. This is something that happened during the Reagan administration. They created the Foreign Missions Act, and it was designed specifically to impose reciprocal restrictions on Soviet and East Bloc officials. Now we're doing it on China. It's another indication that we're recognizing that we're in a new Cold War.
But this is a huge move. This is what we did with Russia during the Cold War, because we realized that those were propaganda things for 20 and 30 years. And Miles Guo has said this from day one. Why are you guys allowing what is state-controlled propaganda to basically act like they're real news service, and your media just picks it up and reports it as fact, and in fact they're absolute lies coming from your enemies?
And then we saw that the Chinese retaliated by expelling 3 Wall Street Journal reporters in China who had nothing to do with an op-ed by Walter Russell Mead, whose headline was "The Real Sick Man of China." China played the race card and claimed that this was somehow a racist connotation. And I can tell you, I reported this week, the State Department is getting ready to retaliate. It's probably going to expel some of these Chinese propagandists in the United States.
This is for everybody at home. This is a huge drop at the ratcheting up of the intensity here. Mike Pompeo is a very even-handed, level-headed guy, and the guys around the State Department, right, there's a lot of never-Trumpers over there. But this thing is ratcheting up to the fact that the Wall Street Journal kicked out, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, kicked out 3 reporters from the Wall Street Journal just on the op-ed. And the op-ed, I dare anybody to go back there, and this op-ed is very even-handed. What Russell Mead is essentially saying is what we said on War Room Pandemic now for 4 weeks. There is something massive going on in China, and it's not the authorities have covered it up and have not acted in the best interest of the Chinese people. Forget the rest of the world, right? And it was a very even-handed. They went nuts. They threw 3 out. But here's the most important thing for the audience to understand, that the State Department said, hey, we're not just going to sit here and tell you. You're going to throw out real reporters from mainstream media operations in China. We're going to start throwing out these guys who work for these propaganda arms. And once again, I just point to Miles Guo. Miles Guo told us this years ago. Miles Guo gave an interview on Voice of America. The plug was pulled immediately, and he said, hey, you're allowing these propaganda things from your enemies to walk around here in Washington like they're real reporters. They're not real reporters. One is propaganda, and number 2, they're essentially intelligence assets. And you're allowing absolute lies that hurt the Chinese people. Don't think you're helping the Chinese people. You're hurting the Chinese people. So, Miles, I want to turn to you now for a second and tell us about your view. You've been very adamant about Chinese media, the official media, and how it's a propaganda arm. You've been correct, because now the State Department agrees with you after a couple of years. Tell us your thoughts.
Yes, sir, 100%. Sir, very important. You last 5 years, CCP signed nearly 1,000 contract with America. Do you see CCP by any contract? Do you see we with 3 years we talk is also 1,000 people under some effect. Where everything you see once fake. So you look about China, everything is the propaganda. It's a CCP full control. You cannot trust this. We are in a decision based on the inside intelligence. CCP now don't like to cooperate transparency and discover the cure. They just use the C-seat solution, save the responsibility onto another. last 8 hours in the China WeChat have the 3 minutes of the videos, very professional. It's a CCP, PLA make. You see, this is the coronavirus, 100% not from natural, but from American CIA. Even it's really from natural, from animal, they don't need, safe responsibility onto America. They want to cover the truth. This is big problem. West side media talk everything is driven by perfect. They don't like driven by the truth. This is the problem, sir.
So Miles is saying now that they're trying to get in front of this story about whether it's man-made or not, that their cover on the weapons side will be that, hey, even if it was, it's CIA. This is America trying to destroy the Chinese Communist Party for its hatred of the Chinese Communist Party. This is your guys. I want to go back to something you brought up that we're going to be driving as a narrative here that the American people are going to, the biological convention, weapons thing. Walk people through what that is and why are we sitting here and allowing the CCP not to let the CDC and other real professionals into Wuhan, not to Beijing to sit there in a conference room and look at data provided by the CCP, but to get the best people in the world, Dr. Gabriel Leung in Hong Kong, to get the CDC guys in Atlanta, to get them into Wuhan, to get them to this Wuhan laboratory that nobody's talking about right now. It's kind of, we don't know what's going on. What is about you said you want to invoke the convention.
Yes.
Tell people what it is, why it's important, and what can be used for it.
Okay, the Biological Weapons Convention is a international arms agreement, and it basically says that signatories to this convention, that's the way it's described, must declare and give up all of their offensive biological weapons programs. China signed up to the convention in 1985, and they did not disclose their offensive biological weapons programs.
They lied. And they actually admitted they lied when they got the P4 lab. One of the elements to get the P4 lab in 2004 or 5, but after SARS, they had to come clean with everything. Yeah. And they essentially admitted from 85 for 20 years they had actually had a program, correct?
Correct, yeah. And I'll point out in my Washington Times column, I reported that there was a vigorous debate within the French government over whether to give them this laboratory. Why was there a debate? Because the security services and the intelligence service believed that the Chinese would use it for biological warfare research, which they are using it for that. It's important to understand that this is a real program. It's a covert program, and the United States. Where's all the arms controllers on this issue? Where's all the liberal arms controllers saying, "Hey, we should have a"?
Where's the op-ed sections of the New York Times? You think it'd be lit up with people trying to say this? It's not. This is what is so concerning, and it should be a concern to the American people. The complicity of the American media into the constant attacks on guys like Miles Guo and the constant attacks on guys like you, when they don't spend 1 second questioning the information that comes out from a totalitarian dictatorship that we now know in this pandemic. And one of the reasons we've done this show is to say they absolutely lied to the world. They lied to the world in December and in January. They lied to the White House. They lied to the world. They took people like Dr. Lee, who's a hero, a global hero, who tried to help the Chinese people by saying, hey, we have a problem. I think this is SARS. This is a problem. We got to get on top of it. They would have put him in prison. They made him sign documents under duress that he was a rumor monger and that he would never do it again. And then he went back and volunteered and went to that hospital and died. Miles, we're out of time today. I want to thank you very much for taking time away from your broadcast into China to join us here on War Room Pandemic. Has been fantastic. And once again, Miles, the State Department says you've been proven right, that the Chinese media is absolutely propaganda armed. So congratulations for another victory.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Jackie.
Bill Gertz,
very much.
The book is Deceiving the Sky, Inside Communist China's Drive for Global Supremacy. It's a must-read. Bill Gertz, columnist of the Washington Times. I want to thank you, Bill, for being here on War Room Pandemic. We'll be back Monday on another episode of this increasing crisis in the world. War Room Pandemic. Thank you very much. See you Monday.
又到尾聲，請你4樣嘢做齊佢，其實係9樣嘢，即係1 2A 2B 2C 3A 3B 4A 4B 4C， 都幾複雜㗎喎嚇。嗱，紫色嗰啲呢，就今次同以前3、4次唔同嘅， 特別係第4點嘅紫色字，佢又唔係 YouTube 嘅嘢。G News 正如注3所講，係喺 browser 直接去嘅一個網站，入到去周圍撳下就有粵語人都睇得明嘅視頻同埋文章㗎啦。特別注意佢嘅首頁中間嘅上方寫住 English 或者中文嗰個位 ，click 下佢就可以有文字轉換。目錄上其他嘅嘢你都周圍 click 下啦，真係好豐富㗎。最後再提你，請做齊畫面上呢4樣嘢，亦即係9樣。OK，拜拜。